Gradually, he also began to close himself off inside. Not only did his academic performance not improve half as much, instead, they were worse than ever. Until this day, there was a new art teacher at school, Nick, and it was his presence. It was his presence that turned Ethan's life upside down. Nick's unique teaching style, he quickly became involved with the students, and naturally, he noticed there was a boy in the classroom who was sulking. He gave everyone a blank piece of paper. There was no requirement for the class to draw freely. Everyone was carefully sketching what they wanted to do. Ethan was the only one staring at the paper in silence. If another teacher had seen him like this, I'm sure he would have been punished again. Kenrick's face was full of concern. He asked Ethan if he didn't like drawing, but it was as if Ethan hadn't heard him. He still didn't say a word. This made Nick feel strange. He wondered why the boy looked so preoccupied at such a young age. In the evening, his mother called. She told him she was going to watch her brother's game this weekend, so he couldn't come to school to see him. Ethan didn't answer. With tears in his eyes, he turned and left silently. He knew that his parents were starting to move away from him too. It was a lonely weekend at school. That day in class, Ethan was again called to the door by his teacher to kneel. Nick, who was passing by, happened to see him. He went up to Ethan and asked him what was wrong. To his surprise, Ethan's eyes were filled with fear. Nick was puzzled. What could have happened? What could have happened to a child like this? He went to Ethan's table to find out. He was very smart. He could see early on that Ethan had a reading and writing problem. Despite his best efforts, he couldn't remember a complete word. After hearing what his table-mate said, Nick suddenly realized something. He rushed to his office to find Ethan's workbook. After a closer look, he realized it wasn't that the boy couldn't write. It was that he had written all the letters in mirror image. What he saw in his vision was different from what others saw. No one could understand what he had written. At that moment, he finally understood why Ethan was the way he was. Every day, he was questioned by his parents and teachers. He even had to put up with the ridicule of his classmates. Under such pressure, it was easy for an adult to break down, not to mention an 8-year-old child. Nick was very concerned about Ethan's situation. He didn't hesitate to visit Ethan's parents. It was here he saw a different side to the boy. That was Ethan's great talent for drawing, the ease of his brushwork, the boldness of his coloring. It's hard to see how an 8-year-old could have done it. He even drew himself a page-turning comic of his family drifting apart. Nick couldn't imagine how much this child has been through. He explained in detail to Ethan's parents about dyslexia, but the father was as stubborn as ever. He thought his son just had a bad attitude towards school. Nick was furious. He took out a toy box from home and asked his father to read out the words on it.
ये कैसे पढ़ सकता हूँ? ये तो चाइनीज में।
अरे कोशिश तो कीजिए, चलिए ध्यान दीजिए।
क्या बेकार की बात कर रहे हैं? मैं कैसे पढ़ सकता हूँ?
बदतमीजी कर रहे हैं। आपका रवैया ठीक नहीं है।
ये
आप शैतानी कर रहे हैं।
In a flash, his father woke up from his dream. What was happening at that moment? Isn't that what his son is experiencing? The boy couldn't read the words, but he had always thought he had an attitude problem. The next day, Nick returned to school. The next day Nick came back to school and told the class that he was going to tell them a story. There was once a boy. He didn't like to read, and he didn't like to write. Whenever he encountered a word, he was in danger. It felt like all the letters of the alphabet were dancing around. As a result, his academic performance was very poor. His classmates and teachers used to tease him. Ethan was so nervous, thinking Nick was talking about him. But the next moment, Nick held up a picture and said, that boy was Albert Einstein. His theory of relativity, which he later developed, shocked the world. And it wasn't just Einstein. Leonardo da Vinci, for example, Picasso, Disney, all of these geniuses suffered from severe dyslexia as children. People around them didn't understand them. They were treated like illiterates. But when they grew up, they all became world changers. After hearing these words,